everyone, welcome back to Show Me How to Win. We're at PAX East 2020 and we're visiting Nick Brachmann from Leader Games. We're here to take a first look of Fort. So, Nick, Leader Games are known for making asymmetric, larger box games like Root, Vast. Fort is going to be a small box game, so why did you guys decide to go small?
So, as you said, we're so used to making these large, complicated strategy games with really big rule books. We're kind of just interested to see, what it looks like if Leader Games applies our game design formula and our graphics and our kind of way of approaching games to a much smaller box. We just kind of want to try to reach out to a bigger audience. Fort's going to be able to be a lot more accessible to a lot of other people in the industry and people who are playing games now. So we just kind of want to see what that looks like. You know, we kind of have our bigger games at $60. Oath coming out later is going to be larger, so Fort being a little bit smaller, kind of want to explore both sides of that market.
Right, most of your games, like if I'm going to play a Leader game title, it's going to be a time commitment.
Yeah, you're committing to an hour and a half plus 2 hours often for these. This is a game we're hoping that people will always be able to play in like under an hour easily, so that's a big thing for us.
Cool, I see that you guys keep the artwork sort of like the same as what you see in Root. Is it the same artist?
Yep, so still Kyle Farron, he does the art for all of our games, and yeah, you know, he brings so much charm to all of these characters and the kids in this cul-de-sac. I love the world he built for Fort.
Okay. So you're the developer on this game, right? Show me how to play.
Yeah, so I'm developer and graphic designer, and yeah, I'll explain kind of how to play Fort. So Fort is a deck building style game where you're going to be playing cards from your hand, collecting the resources in the game, which are pizza and toys, spending those pizza and toys to upgrade your fort, eventually trying to become the most popular kid, represented by victory points here. And those victory points can come from either having a really cool fort at the end of the game, or doing fun things throughout the game and scoring victory points along the victory point track.
Fort, pizza, games. Are you building a treehouse? Is that the fort?
The fort can be whatever you imagine it to be in your dreams. For some people, that's a giant treehouse. For the cardboard faction, you know, maybe theirs is all duct tape and wood and that kind of stuff. Maybe the shovel kids just build a big old hole underground and put some couches down there or something. You kind of get to elaborate on however you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I play this game in PAX Unplugged. So basically, on your turn, you play the cards and then you gather resources. But there is a twist to it because other people can add on to it. Sort of a little bit like, what's that game, Puerto Rico?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of very similar to Puerto Rico and kind of a role selection kind of thing. So yeah, as you were saying, so let's say on your turn, you know, you play this card that allows you to gain a pizza for every shovel that you played. And then you also get the bottom action that says you get a victory point for your fort level. Cool. But then me in the game and everybody else can also potentially take that same top action by simply discarding from my hand either a coin, because those are always wild, or my own shovel. So while you're playing the game, it's kind of about getting as much value out of your own cards as you can, while hoping other people can't, you know, kind of outvalue you there. So yeah, very similar to a Puerto Rico or role selection kind of game in that way.
Right, so you have a hand of cards, but by the time it's your turn, you will not actually, hopefully, not have a full hand of cards because that means you're taking some action on during other people's turn, right?
Yeah, exactly. The best way to get the most value out of your cards in Fort is going to be playing all of them as often as you can to get every single pizza, every single toy you can manage, every little point kind of matters in this game.
Because you only play one card during your turn.
Correct, yeah. You're only ever going to play one card and modify it with additional suits. So, you know, I could play this card, play a bunch of shovels with it, get way more pizza, so that's kind of about that efficiency.
Right. So, basically, when you build your deck, if you only go for shovels, then on your turn, yes, you can play a bunch of shovels, but you can't, other people will know not to play any shovels, right?
Yeah, totally. So you'll find the game often, you know, somebody gets a really strong card, it's a skateboard card per se, and you might not have any skateboards in your deck right now, but it's going to be really important that you get that, so when they're playing that powerful action, you can actually follow it and ride along with them. You know, like kids, you're always kind of trying to copy each other, mimic each other, do the same things, yeah.
Okay, I see the connection with thematic. So now we sort of talk about the game, how it works. So basically on your turn you have a hand of cards, we can only play one, then everybody can join in and you can also do so on other people's turn. But you can also sort of build up your lookout, so there's like a backpack, how many things you can store, because you take the pizza and the toys, but you can only hold so many, but then you turn them in towards points, right? So tell us about that.
Totally. So the resources in the game can kind of be used for two things, and just what you were saying. So normally when you're gaining resources, they're always going into your stuff over here, and you'll see that your stuff has a capacity, right? It can only hold 4. As your fort gets bigger and cooler throughout the game, your pack size over here, an additional place you can store resources, will increase in size, as well as your lookout. And as you mentioned, the lookout's really important for later in the game, because what it lets you do is you can store cards underneath it for having just the suit. So I tuck this card in there, I have that skateboard. Now that means anytime I play a skateboard action, I can add that one skateboard to that modification, right? So that's kind of that late game play. It'll help you get stronger and stronger as you go. And then also you can kind of keep putting more in there. Something will also let you score points based on what's in your lookout or your pack. So there are other big ways to kind of get that victory going. Yeah.
So really, it's a resource management, hand management game. So you're trying to maximize your turn either by trying to get good cards combination, but also you want to make sure that you get the right stuff combination to get the thing you need, because at the beginning you turn in pizza or toy, but then towards the end you have to like a large combination of things in order to move up. And this is kind of like a race to level 5, and whoever gets there first is the winner, right?
Yeah, so the race part of the game is actually one of the biggest things that you want to keep in mind when you're playing. So the game can end in 3 different ways, and that's what you really need to keep an eye on. So like you just mentioned, one of the ways the game can end, if somebody gets to fort level 5, they'll get the macaroni sculpture built in their name, they'll get some extra points, and they'll end the round. They don't necessarily win, but they do end the gameplay. The victory track also has an end condition where if somebody passes 25 points, you finish that round and end the game, as well as if the main deck of cards runs out, you end the game. So often players, you're kind of hedging your bets about like, do I think you're going to be able to get to fort level 5 before I can get the points? Because these points on your fort level don't count until the end of the game, critically, which is super important. So if somebody races up to 25, you haven't scored these 16 on that track yet, which is really important.
All right, so let's talk strategy now. What are some of the things that we should do in general?
Yeah, so in general, what you're trying to do is, so when you're drafting your cards, the beginning of the game, after you've learned how to play with the basic setup, in the advanced setup, you actually draft your 8 starting cards. So things in that draft you really want to keep in mind is your starting cards. So your starting cards you'll be identical to other players, but you'll always have one suit unique. So if you're the skateboard kids, you're going to start with a fort advance with a skateboard. If you're the shovel kids, you'd start with a fort advance with a shovel. So you're already kind of leaning towards one faction when you start. So I'd always say, first thing keep in mind, first look at the cards that match your faction when you're drafting. See if anything there is going to be able to give you more value for what you already have in your deck, right? Then the next thing is there's kind of a lot of different cards about whether you're going to go for victory points or whether you're going to go for fort level. Trying to do both really well will kind of bite you later on. I will say that going just for fort level often won't be enough points to win the game. You're going to need to get to 5 and probably also score maybe 5 points or so throughout the game. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the public and personal actions. That's one of the biggest things to keep in mind when you're valuing your cards. For example, a card like this, Skids here, he has a personal fort advance action. And what that means is if I play this and I have the resources to level up, I can level up all by myself and nobody can do that follow, which is really important, particularly when you're trying to race people to get to that end. Similarly, if somebody has these and you don't think and you realize you're not going to be able to get up there, it might be important to pivot to start getting a lot of victory points. And that's kind of where those things like your pack and your lookout come in. So a few cards, for example, would be like the Ant here or Doc. And you'll see that these cards both have personal actions that will score you points based on your lookout in your pack. So these are points that you're going to get that nobody else even has an opportunity to try to score, which is really important. But you'll see, storing stuff in your pack means you're not spending those resources. So if you're going for pack points, you might not want to be going for as aggressive a fort level, which is really important to keep in mind too.
Okay, I see. So there's different ways to get points. So if you're going for points over here, don't also try to get points here.
You're not going to be able to get to 5 here.
So either do the fort level or do the victory point track and just kind of focus on that. And then to do the fort level, you need resources to exchange stuff for it. But then the other one, the pack one, you do the backpack thing, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. And then also because when you play a card, the cards are broken down into 2 parts. The top part, everybody follows, but bottom part, only you get to do it. So there are certain more powerful actions, such as increase the fort level or get points. You don't want to play those and let other people follow it. If you can play a card that only let you do that, then those are the better cards, right?
Yeah, that's going to be where you really start to get your value. Like, you want to be able to be playing forward advance actions when other people don't even have resources, the other thing to keep in mind. So it's a deck builder where you do really need to keep in mind what other people have, because even though somebody might be at fort level 3 or 4 or something, if they don't have the resources, you know that you can safely play a public forward advance knowing that only you can go along. So it doesn't mean that only you should play personals, but if you're playing publics, you really want to be aware of where other people are at.
Right, and that's all open information because you can see how much everybody has. So be mindful of that. Okay, got it. So it's safe to play it when you know not everybody else can take advantage of it. Okay, so what if you are falling behind the game? So what are some of the things we can do if you're falling behind?
Yeah, so a couple of the things that I always tell people to keep in mind is, so we talked about the pack briefly. So some people might be putting a lot of resources in there, and let's say I'm scoring points for my pack over and over again. I'm getting 3 points a turn, 4 points a turn. What are you supposed to do? Well, the way you can threaten that, a really good example is this card, Captain here. So, for example, he has a personal action that lets you gain a copy of an enemy's pack and add it to your stuff. So let's say you're sitting here, you think you're sitting pretty, scoring points for your pizza. I'm like, cool, that's great. I'm going to play this. I'm going to gain these immediately into my stuff, and then I also have a forward advance action, kind of shotgun myself back in. So if you ever see people bogarting these kind of stuff into their pack, keep an eye out for this action. That's going to be your way to kind of counterplay them and make them have to worry about if they should keep the stuff there, because eventually they might have to spend the resources out of it just so you can't keep getting the value as well, which is really important.
You got that. I want to go get that too.
Exactly, yeah.
What if you're the front runner? What are some of the things you can do to speed up the game, make the game end faster so you can win?
So the big ones I always tell people is, particularly in like a 4-player game or something, the deck out is a condition that I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to. If you're just aggressively recruit from the deck, you can drain that deck as quick as possible to try to get to that game end. Similarly, if you're the person going to end on points, you want to cull your deck down to a size where you can almost always score at least 3 or 4 points a turn to really put that pressure on. A deck that's only scoring 1 point a turn, 2 points a turn might not be aggressive enough to really end the game on that victory track, which is, if you're going to try to beat somebody with a fort level game, the best way to do it is try to rush this points.
Okay, good. Sounds like some really interesting, different kind of directions you can take this game. Even though it's a small box game, but there's like different things you can do, and depending on what cards you draft, things come out differently too. Now, are there some like special kind of event that might happen in the game?
Yeah, so the other thing you do need to keep in mind is throughout the game there's kind of 2 pivotal moments I would describe, at fort level 1 and at fort level 2. So at fort level 1, whenever you get there, you get to look at all of the made-up rules in the game. The made-up rules are the private scoring objectives, right? So the best reason to get there first is if you're a person who's going for fort level or you're going for the game, you might want to get these made-up rules first, because you get to look at all of them. So you get to look at all of them, pick whichever one you want, and keep it secret. So other people have no idea what your made-up rule is, as well as you have an idea of what everybody else's could be.
Give me some of the examples of these made-up rules.
Of course, totally. So some of them, for example, are Slime Lab, which would score you a point for every book action you have in your deck. Another one gives you resources for everything that's in your pack, like we described. Here's another one, Sleepover, for example. You get 8 points at the end of the game if you have the most cards in your deck. So as you've played the game more and more, you kind of will start to be able to see, based on how people are playing, you might be able to get an idea of what made-up rule they're going for. Another example of one that I love is Loner. So your best friend cards, the ones you described at the beginning, Loner says if you've trashed both of these, they're out of your deck by the end of the game, you get 5 more points. So if somebody's trashing their best friends, you might have an idea of what rule they have. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then the other one is at level 2. This is one I really want to talk about. So the perks, these are upgrades that you'll be able to get. And the big thing is, unlike the made-up rules, these start the game face-up. So when we set up the game, let's say it was a 2-player, we'd put out 3 perks face-up on the table. Even before you draft, you put those cards out. And you really want to consider when you're drafting what those perks are, because certain perks are insane when combined with certain actions or depending on what's in the game. So really, I see I think a mistake you might make often is getting to level 2 and then for the first time now reading those perks. You do really want to keep them in mind. Even for those first couple turns, planning around a perk really can put you ahead.
Especially if you're going for the 4 level, so make sure you know what kind of perks you have that's available for that game, and then you start building your deck towards that.
Totally, and the thing you might have to be aware of is that maybe we both see the perk we want, and we're both rushing for it, and now that race is even more important, right? Because some of these perks will let you advance your fort level or recruit more kids. These are really powerful effects that, depending on what your made-up rule is that you just got, that perk might be able to almost double those points.
So it sounds like it's more fun to go for the 4 level.
Actually, I personally like to go for the points, but I do understand people who like the fort level. It kind of depends on what type of game you like to play. I come from card games where I really like just pushing a deck as hard as it can go and kind of making it as cheesy as possible. So I love making a deck that just shoves a bunch of resources into its pack and then scores for that pack. I will say I got punished a couple times this weekend even by players who just kept hitting me with Captain for those fort advances, though.
Right, but you don't get to make up rules and you don't get any perks.
This is true, yeah. So I will say there's also, even though, to that point, there is even a made-up rule that actually is incentivized as being low on fort level. So one of the made-up rules says if at the end of your game, your fort level is exactly 2, you score 8 more points. So again, these are things that you really want to plan around when you're getting into there. So if you get to level 1 and you see that, and you know you have some points in your deck, you can maybe completely abandon fort level and go just for that perk upgrade.
Interesting. So the perks sort of like changes out the game from game to game, and to make it more replayable, right? All right. So we can't get this game yet. Tell us, when can we get him?
So it should be coming out like late summer this year. It's actually going to be the next game you can buy from Leader Games. We're not going to Kickstarter. It's going to be a pre-order on our website and then direct to retail. We're looking at probably about a $30 price point. So this is a really affordable entry into the Leader Games brand, a good way to get a taste of the kind of games we like to make, and also an excuse to get a ton of awesome Kyle Farron art.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for showing me how to play, how to win at Fort, and thank you guys for watching.